Welcome to Real Estate. It's not that complicated. Broker Ryan Cook and curious co-host Kent Thaler guide you through buying and selling minus the jargon. Here's today's episode. Take it away, guys.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Kent. And together we're the real estate navigation team. Today we've got something really exciting in store or on film or whatever you want to call it. Today's episode's great. And it's a little departure for us because we're talking about technology and we're talking about how technology helps the real estate agent, realtor, buying agent, listing agent, and by extension, the client.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I got my license in 2008 and now it says 2025. I've been practicing for 17 years and I've seen a lot of technology come into the market that has benefited, because when I first started, I was still using paper maps, or I was using MapQuest to figure out how we were going to get around to our properties, and then bought my first GPS receiver for the car. I think it was a Tom, and I think it cost $500, but it was a lifesaver. And we've seen applications go from I use an iPad regularly in my business to now pretty much just using solely my iPhone. Electronic signature technology, all sorts of technologies come in that have shaped how we do our business and how we better serve. And I had been trialing, full disclosure, who we're going to have as a guest today, long-term friend of yours, Kent, and you introduced me to John. I think we all met through a fantasy football league, probably prior to the year 2000.
Oh, definitely 1997.
Yeah.
John and I have known each other a little longer than that, but yeah.
A little bit longer. A long-term friend of ours, and they've been working in the GPS space, the global positioning systems and GIS, government information system space, for quite a while. Started off in the small pilot industry. And I remember talking to John about that originally. And they had come out with a newer product, and we saw, and you and I started talking and asked if we could get a unit to play around with for a bit. And we started to see, wow, I could really use this working with my buy-side clients. It gave me a level of insight and in combination with understanding zoning bylaws and stuff that really...
Let me take a step back for a second.
Okay.
There's an adage in technology, right? And the adage is, are you building a solution to a problem, or are you building a solution in search of a problem? And they had a solution in search of a problem. And we were able to identify a huge problem that it solves. And when you started taking it out and using it, you proved our hypothesis very quickly. I can't even begin to tell everybody how many times it's saved you money and made you money in just the last, 8-9 weeks alone.
The money thing, that's all great and wonderful. We're in business to make money. It's what makes capitalism work. But it's the level of service that I was able to provide.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
But it was also, I think it's created an additional level of trust with my clients where, listen, the real estate industry is changing and changing very rapidly. The National Association of Realtors settlement last year has changed relationships between buyer agents or buy-side agents and the buyers themselves. And you really need to, if a buyer is going to sign a contract with you as a professional for services, you need to be bringing more than just a smile and I can get you in the door and set up an appointment for you, because that they can hire anybody. You don't need an expert for that.
Or my favorite one, I'm a great negotiator.
I can't tell you how many agents that are great negotiators and never taken a negotiating class in their life, and they think just saying no is great negotiation. But that's a whole other episode for a future date. Yeah. But what it did is I was able to provide a level of service that I wasn't able to previously. Like we've said before, I'm a chair of my local zoning board. I really understand zoning bylaws. I'm not an attorney, but I understand the zoning bylaws. I understand density and dimensional regulations and land use regulations. But to be able to have something where I could be at a property with a client who had an interest in, I really want a property with a garage. This one doesn't have a garage. Is it something I could add on to at a later date? And be able to tell with a high degree of accuracy without having to go through the process of hiring a surveyor, not it's not to replace a surveyor, because when it comes down to that time, you're going to need to hire a surveyor once you own the property to create an actual plot plan, show dimensions of your future garage, but be able to look at it at a high degree of accuracy and decide, one, if you're easily able to move forward with that property, or if you're not able to move forward because it can't be what you want it to be, or you're so in love with the property, but we may need to add some terms to the offer that you'll add a condition that conditioned upon being able to obtain a survey to be able to put in a 2-car garage or 1-car garage. So it increases your level of certainty as a buyer and as a buyer agent representing your buyer on what a property can and cannot be, where property lines are to a very high degree of accuracy, that for most times is all we really need. We don't typically need the accuracy of a surveyor at the time of just evaluating a property to decide if it's something they're interested in and want to move forward. The most common question agents are asked is, where's the property line? And that's been over the course of my 17-year career. And for most of the time, we've only been able to wave our hands around and say, it's somewhere around here. To know for certain, you'll need to hire a surveyor. And I've taught all my agents to say that. But what this does is allows us to say, if you want an exact degree of certainty, have the line pinned, yes, you need to hire a surveyor. However, with this tool, we can get you accurate within about 4 inches, which changes everything for me representing and advising my clients.
It seems to me that 4 inches in the field instantly, the sheer amount of time that it's going to save you, you'll be able to rule out properties just as fast as you can rule them in.
And that's what it comes down to, especially when you have awkwardly shaped properties and it's really hard if there isn't a fence outlining exactly where a property boundary is. And just because a fence is there doesn't mean that's a property boundary.
Even in a square one, right? There's something to be said for knowing exactly where that line is, or
within 4 inches. It changes everything when you can actually, and I've done this with clients, walk along using this, we said the ReFlex device, to be able to walk along and say, right now we're 4 or 5 inches within accuracy of the property line. And okay, I get a really good sense of where this is. I got a better sense of the property.
You and I both know of a property. We won't say where it is.
Your backyard? I'm sorry.
No, we know another one where we know for a fact that there is a garden that is 18 inches onto their neighbor's yard.
And this particular homeowner did everything right, wanted to put a garden in, hired a professional. And when we walked that friend's property and showed them that about 40% of this garden they paid for is not actually on their property, they're a little flabbergasted.
I would say it was an understatement.
Yeah. Oh.
And the fact is that now they're not selling their house anytime soon, and neither is their neighbor. And the neighbor likes the garden. So there's no contention. But if they were selling the house and you were taking somebody out there to look at it, you could very quickly determine that there may be a problem.
And that's all we want to be able to do. And the job of an agent is to help mitigate risk. I tell my agents this, listen, your job is, most buyers, they don't buy a lot of houses over the course of their lifetime. They may buy 2 or 3. You do this all the time. The average consumer doesn't know what they don't know. And that's why they hire a professional. And this just gives you another layer to be able to help them make great decisions for themselves.
What's unique to me is common to you. And that's part of the reason why we started the podcast. Right. It's to talk about the things that seem complicated aren't really that complicated.
Yeah.
And where the property line is with the Bad Elf ReFlex, all of a sudden it isn't that complicated.
It's not that complicated. So I guess without further ado, why don't we bring our friend John on and get after it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Real Estate. It's Not That Complicated, the podcast. And today we have an extraordinarily special guest that we're very excited about. John Cunningham is CEO and one of the founders of Bad Elf, a consumer electronics company that specializes in GIS and GPS devices that enhance the iOS experience. But we'd really like to do a deep dive today and discuss what the Bad Elf ReFlex is, what it does, what problems it solves, and why it's going to change the way realtors and real estate agents
We were talking about engineers earlier. One of the things that happens in business a lot is engineers are very good at figuring out how something can be built and how it works, but you really need people who understand the market and the industry to decide what should be built in order to satisfy a need. And I think that's where the collaboration between our two organizations is effective, because you guys identified a what, and we happen to have something that provides an answer as to how you can get there. We got started 15 years ago building a plug-in GPS because we were doing some research for the United States Army to do sensor integration. And the iPhone had just come out and the iPad was in the works. And my business partner, who's our CTO, Brett Hackelman, is also a private pilot. And he said, hey, there's this great company that's putting charts, so your maps for flights, on an iPad and an iPhone, but they don't know where they are. Since we're figuring out how to get data into that platform, let's build a GPS receiver that we can plug in and it'll show the pilots where they're located on their charts so they have some situational awareness. And he went off and did a skunkworks project for about 9 months and figured out how to make that happen. And we built it and people bought it. We put it on Amazon just as a fulfilled by Amazon product, and we sold out within 30 days of the first 1,000. We realized that we had a completely different business there, but we really didn't know what we were getting into. We became very popular in the aviation industry. We started expanding into boating and marine, and that was by 2016. But we noticed that we were getting a lot of people in municipal, state, and federal government starting to use our products, but they kept asking us for higher and higher accuracy. So it wasn't until 2019 that we designed our first product, the Flex, which would give you survey grade accuracy at 1 centimeter. But it was an expensive product. It's $3,000 to $6,000 depending on the configuration. And people were looking for something that was nearly as good, but a lot more affordable. And that's where our Flex Mini product came from, which is the product that I just showed you, which out of the box will give you 1.5 meter accuracy. But there's also a correction service that gets delivered to it that can get you down to that hand width or 4-inch accuracy. Sorry, yeah, about 4 inches, about 10 centimeters. And so we had the how, but we didn't know the what. So we had a solution looking for problems to solve. So when you guys approached us saying, hey, we think we found something that we can do with this, the question was, how do we get that to market? And we don't want to have to explain how everything's done to everybody because their eyes glaze over because no one cares about the engineering except for the geeks. And most of the market is not made up of nerds like me that care about that stuff. So we need to make it much more straightforward. So we've taken the ReFlex product and bundled it together with some other services that are available and put together a package working together with you that we think will deliver a solution to your customers that they can use out of the box without having to understand how to do all the configuration and connection. Our goal is to do close to zero configuration and give them hero results.
And so I got to ask, where did the name Bad Elf come from?
We get asked this a lot, and I have to tell you, over the years, I've been approached by at least a dozen marketing consultants who told me, you have to change the name of your company. You can't have the name bad in it. It's just it's a bad look. And so
I might have resembled one of those marketing consultants over the years who point blank said, stupid name.
Yeah. In marketing, the point is to have your customers remember you and see you standing out in a crowd. When we go to the Esri user conference and there's 17 to 20,000 people, every single day we got multiple people that come up to our booth that say, we saw your logo across the hall and had to come over and find out, what is it you guys do? It's stuck. And going back to our origins, we were doing this sensor integration stuff for the US Army back in 2010. We had the idea to build a product to give us a little bit of leverage because we were doing basically time and materials based contracts. And so it was a grind. And we thought if we could make a little bit of money on the side selling these GPS units, that would be great. And we wanted to have kind of a fun name because it was a side project. And we were in Germany at a software conference. And we've always been enamored with the number 11 as a reference back to Spinal Tap and Nigel Tufnell's amplifier that goes to 11. So whenever we build new products, whether it's software or hardware, we turn all the knobs up to 11. Let's put everything we can in it, and then we'll dial it back slowly until we get to the sweet spot. And because we were in Germany and we were enjoying some beers in a beer garden, my business partner, Brett, who speaks German, said the number for 11 in German is Elf. And so we started playing around with things around Elf, and we decided that Bad Elf was the one that we were going to run with. And that's how we got the name.
That story never gets old. It always gives me goosebumps.
So you mentioned initially the product you came out with, you were doing some work for the US government on sensors, and you basically found someone who was developing maps and stuff for iPhone and the iPad for the aviation industry, but couldn't tell where you were. How did that sort of morph into something more handheld device, land-based, etc.?
It was really just responding to customers. For anybody who's started a business from scratch, you know that what you think you're going to be doing going into it is not necessarily what you're going to be doing. I think I read a statistic that something like 80% of businesses fail within the first 2 years. So when we hit the 2-year mark, I was excited that we were still standing. And then we hit the 5-year mark, and we were being challenged by what Apple was doing with the iPad. They were starting to integrate a lot more smarts because they had a lot more resources into their positioning systems within the iPad. And pilots didn't need our device. Certainly the general aviation pilots, they were connected to cell phone towers, and so they were getting some augmented corrections from those signals that would help put them on the right path. We partnered with a factory out of Taipei to build the original handheld products, and they built really solid products, so people weren't replacing them. We thought the useful life of the product was about 3 years. We're 12 years into the time since we produced the first ones, and people are still using them. So we needed to come up with something else to address other markets. And when the governmental agencies and the engineering firms started asking us for something that was higher accuracy, we realized we had to, if we were going to grow, we had to move in that direction.
Now, what is all this based on? Because I know, say for example, when I'm doing research on a property for a client, most of the municipalities in my area have moved to a GIS server for gathering all that type of information. Can you tell us a little bit about what GIS is? And then on top of that, how with the device, like why is the Apple Maps built into your iPhone, or if you're using Google Maps in your iPhone, why is that just not good enough?
John, one other thing before you get into this discussion, can you explain the difference between GIS and GPS?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah.
Yeah, I could actually talk about this for too long, so you can tell me when to stop.
We will cut you off as soon as I fall asleep, I promise.
So GPS is Global Positioning System. It's a network of satellites based on geometry and physics of signals traveling through space and time. The more vectors you have between the satellites knowing where they are and how long it takes those signals to get to you, you can do some pretty exhaustive calculations to determine where you are relative to those satellites. When you put all that stuff together, everybody's familiar with the notion of triangulation. This is sort of triangulation on steroids, and it gets you your position with a certain degree of accuracy. And it's really a question of how much information do you have available in your models and your signals, and that can give you much higher accuracy. There was a time where the global positioning system was run by the DoD, and you couldn't get more than 10-meter accuracy because it was a national security risk. That was taken off years ago. And in terms of GIS, you're talking about people who have assets that are at locations and they need to manage them. So where are all the manhole covers? Where are all the storm drains that need to be vacuumed out every spring? Or fall? Having time and place attached to things of value has become an effective way of not only managing and maintaining things, but also planning for replacement.
So, to sum up and make it simple, GPS is the system of locating something. GIS is the system that tells you where something is.
Or just recording the data so that you can use it for your business purposes. So it's an information management system. And I think it stems from the work that Jack Dangermond did when he was at Harvard as a graduate student in the 60s, when computers were first becoming more commonly accessible. He was trying to figure out, how do we get place attached to information in a computer? And that ended up, it took a couple decades to get very far. And obviously the government was the biggest consumer of those services initially.
Okay. So we've got GIS, and we've got GIS mapping that are determined by, for lack of a better term, GPS location data. How does that help real estate? I know what the problem was. The problem is I walk into my backyard and I say, hey, where's the property line? I look at the playhouse in the back of my yard. You've seen this. You've been at my house before. And we wonder, is it on my property? There's a PVC tube that sticks out of the ground between my neighbor's yard and mine. Is that the property line? And the problem, as we understood it before you came up with an ingenious solution, was, how do you solve that problem?
Someone else solved the problem. We're just the conduit that got it to you.
Gotcha.
Having the device, receiving the satellite signals, can give you a pretty good idea of where you are. Now, if that's 1.5 meters to 2 meters, in most cases, that's fine. If you're driving your kids to their soccer practice and you've got 2-meter accuracy, you're going to get to where you're going to go, and that's plenty good for that application. But when you start looking at zoning requirements and setbacks, for instance, so I want to put a pool in and I have to be some number of feet away from my property line, you need to have a good idea, and you're ultimately probably going to have to hire a surveyor because you need to have these things documented. There's a time and a cost associated with that. You want better than 2 meters. And there are correction services that the way they work is you've got a known point on the ground and it's known to within 1 centimeter because it's been placed there by someone who's licensed as a surveyor to put it there. And it's listening to the satellite signals. Now it knows what the right answer is and it's calculating and it's not getting the right answer, but it knows in each X, Y, and Z dimension how much it's off by. And it can send that information back to a server somewhere. And then when you're within some radius of that site, you can get those corrections so that when you're receiving the satellite signals, you can apply those corrections and you can bring that 2-meter accuracy down to the 10 centimeters.
Okay. So for those of you who speak in American, 10 centimeters is equivalent to 4 inches.
Right.
Or thereabouts. And John, as an engineer, likes to talk in metrics, and I will try and translate as often as I possibly can. The application for that in the real estate market is huge because all of a sudden, and again, we are not replacing surveyors can tell you exactly where something is. Our measurements are only as good as the overlay maps that we can get on our iPhone. And we believe that we've found currently a mapping solution that is pretty accurate based on tax maps that are supplied by municipalities all over the country. And we believe we've demonstrated, and Ryan and I will show a video in a little bit showing this, where you can actually see where you are in real time within 4 inches of where the device is sitting. It's a remarkable leap forward for real estate because you no longer have discussions of, hey, where is that property line? It might take 6 weeks to get a surveyor out here, but we can find out. And Ryan's been using the device now in the field for about a month.
A little bit longer than that.
Yeah, maybe 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. And he probably has a dozen stories, examples where it has already saved him time and money and allowed him to have customers go forward with properties or walk away from properties and not waste any time because they were able to answer simple questions that in the past would have taken him days of research to solve.
Well, and I really would not have been able to solve them because I'd just be going off a tax map and I don't have any coordinates like a latitude and longitude, minutes and seconds, and a device to be able to do that. I didn't carry around a tripod with a GPS receiver and the whole deal. Where's the property line? I'm like, which, by the way, when you're in real estate, is a question you get asked a lot, especially when someone's really interested in a property. And in a hot market where people have to make really quick decisions, you're really throwing your hands in the air and going, I don't know, somewhere around here. And you're hoping that in the end, like one of the forms you get as part of your closing process called a mortgage plot plan. I have never, ever seen a surveyor driving around taking actual readings from a mortgage plot plan. So I'm not sure exactly how those are being generated, but they are being generated by surveyors. And the fact is, people really don't know exactly where their land is until they hire a surveyor, and we'll call pin the corners. But I was able to with a number of clients. We have some pretty funky shaped lots around here. Not everything's a nice little perfect rectangle. And realizing that on one property we looked at, the property line actually went 50 feet beyond where the fence was. So, there's actually more land here. And there was actually a chunk of land off to the side that was about 80 foot by 20 foot that was actually part of the property that we did not think. It wasn't mowed, it wasn't anything, but it was clearly, after using the device in combination with the tax maps that we have on the phone, we were able to see this is part of the property too. It was very helpful in that regard. Another client, we were trying to understand where the back of the property line was because there wasn't a lot of space and then there was a pretty steep hill back there, and we were able to clearly delineate exactly, I shouldn't say exactly, to a really high degree of accuracy where the property line stops so they could look and say, it's just not enough space back here for us. I had a client where we were told there was a hill going up. They were on a hill, property next door, and the listing agent was telling us the property line was a line of arborvitaes at the top of the hill. And there was a set of stairs on the hill that were made out of railroad ties that was falling apart. It was definitely a hazard. And my client's thinking like, I'm going to need to address those stairs. Like that's a safety issue and I don't want to get sued. And we were able to, with this device, with the ReFlex, we were able to say the property line is actually at the bottom of this hill. It's not the top of the hill. It's not that lawn of arborvitaes. That's the next door neighbors. And this set of stairs, that's their problem, not the problem associated with this. And the property owners didn't even know that. So we were able to tell that very quickly. And he was like, oh, all right, I don't have to worry about that. And they ended up moving forward and securing that property. But that was a real big concern because that would have been a fairly significant cost and an insurance risk for him. And his type of position, like he doesn't want to deal with that type of risk. So it's been very helpful for me in that regard.
It's already paid for itself.
Yeah, easily.
Around here, you're supposed to have a 24-inch setback from the fence. So the fence is always on somebody's property. It doesn't mark the property. And I think the conventional wisdom is always the fence is where the property line is, but it isn't. And so it's interesting to take the device and go out there and stand on one side of the fence and then stand on the other side of the fence. And then you know exactly whose fence it is and whether or not you're responsible for it.
Yeah, a lot of times we'll look at, especially like a stockade style fence, and be like, oh, the ugly side is your side.
Yeah.
But we really don't know. So what this has been able to do, at least for me in doing field trials with my clients, and then they're glued to me, next to me, staring at my phone as we walk around the property. It's been very helpful in that regard.
We'll have a firmware update that will help you with that so you can connect their phones to it as well so that they can.
Oh, maybe I like that close time, John. I don't know.
One of the cool things about the product is that it's device reflex agnostic, meaning it's not tied to a specific phone. All of the technology is tied into the reflex, and the reflex is serving a signal to the phone. It allows for, like John just said, they're doing an update where they're going to allow multiple screens looking at the thing at the same time.
Yep.
You could conceivably bring an iPad and your iPhone running the same map program and be able to look at it that way. But the other really great use, because it's agnostic, is that you can share the device in an office, for example. Multiple people can be using it over the course of a month. So is it true that we're calling the pole the wizard pole?
I've heard you say that. We're elves, not wizards.
Yes, you're walking around with your little walking stick, and
your customers can be Gandalf the White.
We've talked a couple of times and mentioned that this doesn't replace surveying, but we look at it as being a companion to it and a definite help in that it will identify situations when you need a surveyor. And at the same time, it will also identify ones where you might not necessarily need one. And talk a little about how you see the product interacting with surveying and what they do that's different than what we're doing and why you would necessarily want both of them to work in combination.
Surveyors are professionals, right? You don't do surgery on yourself or your family. You go to a surgeon to get that done. And you want to bring in people who are appropriately knowledgeable and skillful in areas where the stakes are higher. So when you need a quick and dirty answer that is going to be relatively accurate, it's appropriate to use our product. If you need to submit drawings or make claims, whether it has to do with insurance or property valuations or
encroachments, stuff like that,
compliance with zoning regulations and things like that, you're going to want to work with a surveyor. And that's critically important. No court, right, is going to say, oh, you use the Bad Elf device for this, that's good enough. They want a stamp from a surveyor who is certifying that this information is true and accurate.
So you mentioned zoning bylaws and stuff like that. Zoning bylaws are critically important to understand, especially when you're looking at a property. I'll have clients that say, I really like a garage, but if a house doesn't have a garage, I'd like to know that I have the ability to put in a garage. And that's where zoning bylaws come in. They'll do things like have setbacks. So you can't build right up to your property line. It may be a side setback of 15 or 20 foot. Would the device be good enough to give us a rough idea that if we're at the corner of a property in combination with the tax map, that whether or not there's the chance of being able to add that garage that someone wants?
Yeah, I think so. I've used it informally for my own property that I wanted to know, would I be able to fit a generator on the north side of the house? And there's only 10 feet between the house and the property line. But I don't know exactly where the property line is because there's no fence there. And there are setback requirements. And it gets complicated because, yes, you need, I can't remember what it is, 5 feet for the generator is a setback from the property line. But if it's below a certain number of decibels, then it halves that distance. So it gets down to 2.5 feet. But then it's got to be a certain number of feet away from the house and from the windows. And so you start doing all the geometry. And it gets into, okay, how big is the generator now? Because if I get a smaller one, it still provide enough power, but now it's going to be in compliance with the zoning requirement. And maybe it's because I'm an engineer that I actually try to do all that math, but you can get a pretty close approximation, because the truth is when the inspector comes out to inspect it, if it's 1 or 2 inches off, it's probably not going to be an issue unless you've done something egregious that they're looking for an excuse to call you out on.
Yeah, so that's something that comes up very regularly. Same thing with wellheads. You can't do certain things within distance of a wellhead. You can't do, for those who have subsurface disposal systems or a septic system, you can't build within so many feet of the septic tank or the septic field. So trying to understand that stuff, especially folks want to put in a pool. Do you have the ability to do something like that? So all it's doing, it's not giving us a definitive answer. What it's doing is helping us to understand to a certain degree of confidence to allow someone to make that decision on whether or not they're going to move forward. And I think that's where I've been able to, with my clients, help them understand that.
As I see it, what it really is doing is it's allowing for a conversation to be had that in prior times, the answer was, I don't really know.
And people now, put their hands and just say no.
Yeah. Now, all of this
is the path to getting to yes.
Yes. And in doing so, you're speeding up the process. So if I'm out looking for a piece of property and I'm with an agent like Ryan who has the device, there's a negative and there's a positive, right? In the positive cases, it's, oh, can I build a house here? Can I build a garage here?
Sorry.
No, but here's the negative. The negative is I can't build the garage. I don't want to look at this house anymore. Let's move on.
Correct. Yeah.
So it does two things. One is in properties that I'm interested in, it can very quickly determine whether I have interest that I want to actually place an offer on or not. It becomes very binary.
And what's really interesting, in Massachusetts, there was a law passed last year, the Affordable Homes Act. And one of the things that the Affordable Homes Act that Governor Healy signed in has to deal with accessory dwelling units. Now, It used to be what we call in-law suite or something like that. It used to be in Massachusetts that it had to be attached. It couldn't be detached. Now the updated laws are that if you're in a single family zoned area, every single family zoned property in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has the right by law to install an ADU, but you still got to conform to the setbacks. So if you have someone who is out looking for space, whether it be an accessory dwelling unit that they intend to use for a family member, it does not restrict you from making it a rental property on your single family property. Amazingly enough, it allows you to pretty quickly determine, is there even enough space to do it to conform with the zoning bylaws, or with the right mapping solution that they'll have that is a GIS based. We'll go back to that word, government information system, that has information on wetlands, etc. You can start to get a pretty good idea of, do I have the space? Do I not? It can help you eliminate a property super quick, for one, and save you time, or let you know, like, it clearly we have no problems. Boy, we're just not sure. In this case, for us to be able to move forward on this, we would want to put a contingency in our offer. Being able to do this, having a surveyor come out and show that it's something we can do. So it really is helping to clarify, as certainly zoning bylaws are amended, especially for affordability issues here in the Northeast.
Ryan and I have filmed some videos at this point in time showing exactly how the Bad Elf can be used in the field. And we're like to show them to you right now.
Every property visit starts with one question. Where's the boundary really? The Bad Elf ReFlex turns your phone into a high-accuracy GPS tool for the field. No bulky gear, no guesswork. Whether you're a realtor, builder, or investor, it helps you make confident calls before hiring a surveyor. Compact, reliable, field tested by pros who don't just walk the line, they map it. Get your ReFlex today at renavteam.com/ReFlex and start navigating smarter.
So as you can see, the applications for the device are incredible and it looks simple to use. John, how easy is it to set up and use it for somebody like me, for example?
I watched you take it out of the box and get it up and running in no time. Our goal is to make it a zero operation startup. So it will come pre-configured with your RTK correction services enabled.
Wait, hold on. You said RTK correction services. What is that?
That's the thing that gets you from 1.5 meters down to the 10 centimeters.
I'm sorry.
Did you want to translate that into imperial for us non-metric people?
I was about to, but I stopped.
Roughly 4 inches of accuracy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
From about 6 feet.
Yeah. So we really want you to be able to just take the device out of the box, scan a couple QR codes, and be up and running. So the first QR code will basically just make sure that your device is enabled, and the second one would bring you to the app download so that you'd be able to download the parcel map.
Now, within the purchasing of it, is there a monthly subscription fee that has to go with the purchase?
The purchasing model is you would make a one-time purchase of $500 for the device, and then there would be $100 a month for 24-month subscription.
What happens after 24 months?
It can roll over month to month, or you can cancel it and you still keep the device.
Right.
And
But
the device would still give you that 1.5 meters to 2 meter accuracy, but without the subscription, you wouldn't be getting the high accuracy.
so the important part of this is that in order to get the high accuracy, we need the subscription, but that's what separates this device from like the GPS on your phone, for example.
The GPS on your phone can't reliably give you more than 5-meter accuracy.
5 meters in layman's talk is about 17 feet.
And that's because it's got a very small antenna and it has to rely on cellular network and triangulation and Wi-Fi networks.
Are we going to pass on the cheap joke? The size matters. Come on. It's got a small antenna. So the challenge, and it's funny, what does that end up doing? So someone breaks out their iPhone or their Droid and they bring up their Maps app and they happen to say they're using the other app that has the tax map, the boundaries, the property boundaries on it, what are they going to see if they're not using your device?
They will see one of two things. Either they'll see a blue dot with a ring around it that says you're someplace in the outer ring, and our best guess is where the blue dot is, but you could be any place in that sort of lighter blue circle. Or you're going to see your position bouncing around. So you could be standing directly on the property line, and you could be floating to the west and then floating to the east and not being in a particular spot because your accuracy is, the error associated with that accuracy is too large. Whereas with the ReFlex device, we should give you pinpoint accuracy, and as you zoom in on the picture, you should remain stationary, and it should be giving you a pretty good representation of where you are.
Yeah, so you're not going to see it bouncing around and stuff like that. It's pretty much, you shouldn't see the dot moving around at all.
Exactly. But you're not playing the floor is lava.
You're as bad as he is.
My grandson liked that.
So getting back to this, from Ryan, from your perspective, what the costs are. As John says, it's $499.99 or $500 a month, as a one-time charge to get the device, and then it's $100 a month. How many sales do you think that you need to do extra as a real estate agent or realtor or broker a year to be able to afford the device?
I think the larger question is we have to take into account the NAR settlement that happened in the summer of 2024. And one of the outcomes of that settlement is that buyer representatives.
We've talked a little about the NAR settlement on past podcasts.
Yeah.
Just as a refresher, what was NAR again?
The National Association of Realtors.
Okay.
So not every licensed agent is a member. So the National Association is really, it's a trade organization that licensees can be a member of, and the trade organization lobbies on behalf of its members and property owners across the country. And I'm very active in my state association. Now, part of that settlement was that a buyer representative needs to get a contract with a buyer. So if a buyer is going out to look at a property, I think the larger question here is, how do you separate yourself from everybody else? If you are just like, I'm a great guy or a great gal, I'm an expert negotiator, which every agent's going to tell you they're an expert negotiator. How do you start to separate yourself? What additional services and value are you providing to a home buyer? Now, a home buyer isn't themselves. It doesn't make sense for a home buyer to go out and do this themselves and not hire an agent. Honestly, it'd be foolish. And I have plenty of stories for that. And it's not just a biased story because I am a broker and I have agents that I serve serving other buyers and sellers. But as an individual purchaser of property, if I'm only purchasing a home for myself and my family, having that subscription for 2 years doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. But you really should have someone who is able to provide you additional information above and beyond what you can potentially look up yourself. There are always a situation of you don't know what you don't know, right? So you don't even know the list of things you should be looking for as a consumer because you don't do this all the time. But in this case, how is that agent helping that buyer better understand the properties they're evaluating? Will it pay for itself? Honestly, what you sell one house, at least in my area, I mean, it's a portion of one commission because the average sale price in my town at this point in time is around $725,000. One commission, a portion of one commission pays for the device and the service for the 2 years. That's a non-issue. In other parts of the country where the prices are much lower, it might take a little bit longer to recoup that cost. But you're now providing a service that, one, has never been available before. So you're providing a level of expertise and professionalism that hasn't been available. You are now also able to help a person understand that property at a much higher level than I think has ever been available. Listen, I keep multiple tape measures in my car, and I typically grab one, throw it on my belt when I head out with my buy-side clients when we're going out and look at properties. So when they start to have those types of questions, I'm breaking out my tape measure and stretching it out along corners to see how far we are. But man, like with the app we've been using, you can swing arcs. So I can say I'm here, and I can swing an arc and say I'm standing at a wellhead. So a septic system can't be within 100 foot of a wellhead, or you can't build within 15 foot of a septic tank. I can understand if I have a map of the septic system, and I can figure out with a tape measure where the septic tank is, and I can swing an arc or have it swing an arc for me, and I can walk to where that spot is and go, you can't build anywhere roughly from about this point this way. You know, what you wanted to do with this property, it doesn't look like it's going to be able to do that.
Wait a minute. Or the positive, it looks like you can.
You have to look at it. It's helping a person understand on a much higher level what they can and can't do with their property, the potential, and to be able to have a pretty high degree of certainty in a matter of the past. You'd have to guess, and you're telling them you have to hire a surveyor. The survey degree of accuracy is absolutely necessary for certain things. But when we're evaluating property quickly, we can determine very rapidly, probably within a 90, 95% degree of accuracy or 100% degree of accuracy, if my setbacks or I got a giant piece of land, we can tell pretty quickly whether they can or can't do something. You as the agent are providing a level of service that agents not using the device are unable to provide at all. There was a time where multiple listing services were all printed, right? And if you didn't have access, there was a day, I think it was every other week, the MLS book was printed. And that's why there were so many different multiple listing services. You'd go down to your multiple listing service. They would have your copy of your book for your office. And whoever had that book had all the information on the property that was available. Outside of that, it just wasn't available to the public. And then MLSs went online. And then services like Zillow understood the value of that and made it more public. And now that information was now available to the public as a whole, and more people were informed. I think my own personal opinion is that this starts to become something that will become a required tool for a buyer representative agent to successfully execute their job and provide a service to the buyer. I think the buyers are going to start demanding, hey, I heard such and such agent has this, do you? And it will become a differentiator that if you don't have this, if you don't have a cell phone and I can't get a hold of you, and you just have a landline and I got to call your physical office to get a hold of you, those folks don't exist anymore because they provided a barrier to the client getting the services they want. I get the feeling that this product is going to be very similar. This type of service is going to be very similar. And for agents looking for a way to differentiate themselves, because now if buyers need to sign a representation contract, they want to know they have someone who's out there able to provide them information that they can't get themselves.
Following up on that, back to the ease of setup and how it works. The data gets fed into the mapping program, correct? Once you have the mapping program up and running, I won't have to do anything with the Bad Elf other than turn it on and turn it off.
Keep it charged before you go out. The other important thing is when you first unbox it, you want to take it outside and get that first lock. That will be the longest time to lock that you should experience. Once that's in the system, then it knows what to look for when it goes back outside. And the other thing that's important is the number of satellites that this device can listen to is very high, because it listens to the US satellite network, the Russian satellite network, the European satellite network, and the Chinese satellite network. And when those satellites are overhead, it just gives it much more data to get to that solution fix faster.
You mentioned that there can be a lag, at least in the first time that you're using it. That's to be expected. And that's so that because it's in a new location. So it has to do all the math again and find all the satellites. So it's not because of something inherent in the product. It's just setting itself up to know where to look in the sky because the satellites move.
Yeah, the engine inside the device will cache some information. So there's a notion of a hot start and a cold start, right? And in the cold start, you assume that it knows nothing about where it is in the world, and it's getting satellite information and it's trying to figure all that stuff out. And so it primes the pump. And once that's done, you'll have hot start times. If you keep the device on and you go from one property to another property, you're going to get a lock super fast. But if
Um,
you get on an airplane and you fly from California to Massachusetts, it's going to take a couple of minutes before it says, oh, okay, I realize I'm not anywhere near where I was last time.
got it. I also want to pick up something you said about the battery. Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong. You have not recharged yours yet.
I had to recharge it for the first time this past weekend. I've been using it for longer than 8 weeks. So this is the first time I had to charge it. And realistically, that's because I was indoors so much. And of course, it's trying to find lock on satellites while I'm indoors. So it's expending a lot of power trying to find satellites. So I did actually have to charge it for the first time, but I've been using it for weeks and weeks, and it was still showed a full battery.
Our goal has always been to make sure that our products will run all day without a recharge so that people don't get stuck out in the field trying to do something and realize that they need to be recharging their device. You can recharge it through a standard car charger with a USB cable or from any wall charger or computer.
It's a USB-C connection, correct? Yeah. So that makes it easy, and it's compatible. It's the same cord that you use to charge your iPhone.
That is correct. Some members of my family are still on Lightning connectors.
That sounds like a you problem.
I'm not a big fan of the Lightning connector because back when we created our first GPS device, it was with a 30-pin wide connector on the iPhone. Apple didn't tell any of their vendors that they were changing to the Lightning connector until they did it. We had just purchased many thousands of 30-pin connectors in August of 2012, and they announced the new connector in September of 2012. It took us 5 years to sell off that inventory because sales dropped 90% month to month, and we were sitting on an awful lot of inventory. That was not fun.
The good news is we're not going to do that again.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things I want to ask is how difficult is this to use for a brand new agent, even someone who's not very tech forward?
If Kent can use it, anybody can use it.
Right.
There's a little smirk on everybody's face about that, but there's a lot of truth to that. All joking aside, I set my original one up in less than 5 minutes. I did it in front of John on the off chance that something wasn't going to work, and it all worked very quickly and easily. 2 weeks ago, I think, maybe 3 weeks ago, Ryan and I set up one just to see the process and see if anything would change. I was able to do it again.
On your wife's phone.
On my wife's phone, no less. I don't think it took us more than 10 minutes to have a lock.
From the time of
when we started downloading it.
Affiliate the device with the phone, install the software, and have a lock and show position on a map.
I don't think it was 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we talk about ease of use, John, and so full disclosure, I've known John for 25, maybe 30 years. Yeah, at least. And he and I have discussed this in the past at great lengths. The concept of it just working. And one of the things that I love about the device, and I like a lot about Bad Elf, is that they understand the consumer interface. They understand that we, as a consumer, don't really care about the things that they care about.
You don't care about the how, you care about the what. And also, I get accused all the time of not having any patience for anything. And I finally met somebody who has less patience for things than I do. And so if we can make you happy, then that's enough.
Yeah. And patience is an interesting concept, but in this particular case, there's time equals money, right? And so to be able to use the device and to be able to not have any questions and for it to be intuitive, and all it does, once it hooks up into your iPhone, it just is replacing location services.
We trademarked the phrase engineering magic, which harkens back to Arthur C. Clarke, science fiction author, who said anything sufficiently advanced beyond the understanding of its audience is considered to be magic. And it's something that we can do using the science and the physics underlying this is deliver a magical solution to people. You don't need to know how it works. You want to get your position as accurate as possible, as quickly as possible. And that's what we're trying to engineer the delivery of.
I mentioned the fact that Ryan hadn't had to charge his ReFlex in 8 weeks or thereabouts. And the reason why I brought that up is that the use case that real estate agents have for the ReFlex is very different than, say, somebody who's working for a municipal government who is charting a state park, right? Whereas that person might be using the device all day and be having a series of maybe 1,000 points that they're going to use to generate a digital map. Whereas the real estate agent, all we're looking for, not that I'm a real estate agent, I'm using the royal we, not the actual we. All that they're looking for is a moment in time usage, 10, 15, 20 seconds. And to be able to turn the device on and to be able to walk from maybe one end of the property to another end of the property and follow a line on a map, that's it. And to have that power and to be that accuracy in their hands is revolutionary. I mean, Ryan's mentioned it a couple of times. I know it sounds like we're doing a sell job, but it's not. You saw the video. You saw us being able to walk straight down the line and know exactly where one property ended and the other one started.
Yeah, for me, I typically will turn the device on when I hop in my car and I'm on my way over, and then I just leave it on the whole time. And when it comes time where they're looking for more information, all I do is bring up the app on my phone and away we go. It's already locked in.
How many of your clients have said, "Oh my God, what's that?"
Not just clients, but like even at open houses where I'm walking around with my clients and other agents are asking, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, hold on, let me finish my clients. I'll come back and show you." And there's been like, "Oh, wait a second, you can do that?"
What I was going to say is we spoke to 2 agents offline who were very interested in hearing about the product because they had not heard of that type of solution being available to them. And they immediately understood what it was and how it would change how they present properties to potential clients or actual clients.
Our job as agents is to stay on top of the market, stay on top of trends, find services to bring higher levels of service information to our clients. It used to be, for example, that for everything we wanted to find out about a property, you had to take a trip to town hall or city hall. And depending on what information you needed, you had to go to that department and you had to get a paper copy and they charged you $1 per page. And that quickly changed to a lot of information being available online. The physical time of driving to town hall or city hall and spending an hour or more going to different departments to get information. Now, through GIS, government information systems, all that stuff is now available online. And it's not something that the consumer or buyer will typically knows anything about, nor should they. They don't need to know, nor do they want to know. Just while I'm interested in the technology or the product John has, that's my engineering background and inquisitiveness. But for the average person, all they want to know is it turns on and it just works. John, can you explain to folks just a little bit how that technology really works? They're at one property in Cranston, Rhode Island, and then they do a next showing in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. How is it able to stay locked that whole time? Or they turn the device off and turn it back on and it picks up that lock so quickly. How is it able to do that?
You can say magic if you want to.
It's a little bit outside my actual expertise, but if you think about it, it's really, there's a dictionary of satellites, right? Every satellite has a name. And when the antenna picks up the signal, encoded in that signal is, this is what satellite you're hearing, this is the signal strength you're getting from it, and this is its position, and all that stuff gets put into the computational engine that's inside the device to do the math on it. And so when the satellites are rotating around the Earth, or the Earth is rotating under the satellites, depending on how you want to look at it. So you're seeing different satellites at different times of the day. And so it's got to do updates to that. So the satellites that remain in view between observation A and observation B, you're going to have an entry in the dictionary for those. And then some are going to fall out and new ones are going to come in. And then you have to do the recalculations on that.
And just happens instantly.
It's an algorithmic process, and yeah, it happens instantly.
Yeah. So for the consumer, for the agent, turn it on, it just works, and you get a nice solid dot that isn't floating all over the place. What other professions do you see where this would benefit their business?
Anybody that has to deal with property lines adjacent to real estate professionals, anybody that's doing landscaping, right? Because they may want to plant things or water things and have restrictions on that. I would think that municipal officials, whether zoning officials or building officials, they would benefit from having better quality information available to them at a glance, and then only need to deal with surveyors when they need to actually document things, or they need to find out whether or not something's legal in a questionable situation where there's a confrontation between different parties. And it's interesting. There are all kinds of unusual cases. We've got people that are arborists, and they go and they take tree inventories. And so they can use our
From our perspective, I would think that it would be more, we touched on construction, you mentioned landscape architecture, fence installers, driveway pavers, pool installer, pool.
See anybody touching land?
All of that. Yep. People who have to make sure that what they're doing is on the property. We've all heard the horror stories where a piece of real estate gets sold, or they're at the closing and the final survey comes in and they find out that a fence that they built wasn't on their property, a brick wall that they built wasn't on their property, or a swimming pool that they built doesn't meet the variant and they never got it. And so now they have to take it down, take it out. Or
an easement that prevents they can build what they want on the easement, but it also gives the other person the right to tear it down.
Yeah. Or an ADU is built, but it just happened to have been built in the wrong part of the property. You looked out in the backyard and you thought, oh, that's mine all the way back to the hill.
Our top of the line products are capable of delivering those answers. A factory gets flooded and they make an insurance claim, and the insurance company has to go out there and say, okay, was this properly insured?
The ReFlex, for full disclosure, the ReFlex does not determine elevation. It only determines
your XY coordinate, basically.
Your XY coordinate. Yes, it does not have a Z thing. But there are an awful lot of applications for the device, as we have worked with John to configure it with the mapping solutions that are available, that allow for more than just real estate application. And I think Ryan asks a really good question when he's looking at what other markets can benefit from the solution, because there are a lot of them. So John, tell me, where can somebody buy the ReFlex package?
You can buy it on our web store, which is at badelf.com/reflex. And I believe there should be a link below.
That's awesome. We look forward to being your partner and helping produce the materials for the training and the how-to. Ryan and I are very excited about that. We've got some great ideas on what we're going to do for those videos. They'll be available, and we've set up a page on our website, which is at the RENavteam.com, where you'll be able to see those videos that'll help you in case with any troubleshooting and anything that you need to do to get up and running. We really appreciate your time. Do you have any final thoughts about what people should be doing, or the product, or Bad Elf in general, and what you might be doing next?
And I'm excited about this because it's, as I said earlier, a lot of times as engineers, we build things looking for problems to solve. And you guys have identified a problem that needed solving and an opportunity to provide service to people. to get them better information, to make better decisions. And really, that at the end of the day, that's what we like to see our products used for, is to improve what people are trying to do professionally.
Thank you again for giving us your time today. We really
thanks, John.
appreciate it. And hopefully if we have any more questions in the future, we can come back to you or somebody else from Bad Elf, and
Sure. We're always available.
That'll be great. So
Awesome.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye. That was so cool.
It's amazing. I just thought the story John had was they really came up with the product and they didn't have a solution for it. And having been a former engineer, like engineers like to work on things that are fun. And you like to push the boundaries, and you come up with these great solutions to problems that you're not even sure. You thought it was something, but there's no market for it. And it almost seemed like this device fit that mold. And we were able to, just through our conversations and me doing this as a profession, see a space where this made sense, and not just for the purpose of helping a company sell units. That's beyond that. This is helping people make better decisions for themselves in a very useful manner.
Yeah. To me, it revolutionizes how you do your job, right? It's a tool for me as the potential home buyer. I say to my agent, hey, where's the line? Now, all of a sudden you break out the tool and you show me the line.
Yeah.
And that becomes common to you. But that's really unique in that last time I bought a house was in 1996, right? We didn't know where the property line was. And prior to that, I bought a condominium in 1990. I didn't have to know about where a property line was. It was a condo. But when you're out in the field and you're able to say to a client with 4-inch certainty, the line is here, it's within, that's a game changer. The sheer amount of time of being saved by being able to rule a property out, or being able to say, oh my God, we can absolutely add this garage. Let's go write the offer up right now.
Yeah. And I just thought of this while you were explaining that, is that a very common feature of property in New England are stone walls.
Yeah.
People don't realize that there are more miles of stone walls in New England separating properties or as property boundaries than anywhere else in the world. Hadrian's Wall in the UK was always considered the longest stone wall, but when they actually took all the stone walls in New England, all our stone walls comprise much more space. And a lot of folks think that stone wall is the boundary. I found more times than not, it's not.
And where it was convenient to dump the stones.
And the same thing with fences. People think the fences are the property boundaries. People always assume that shed back there is either theirs or the neighbors, like they don't know. They want to be able to put in a pool. Can they do it? There's so many great uses of this, and a product that's you turn it on, you open up the app, and it just works.
We're really excited that we're going to be the team that's going to bring all of the teaching and set up instructional videos to people. We'll be able to explain things simple, uncomplicated
Yep.
ways.
This is the kind of the theme of our show.
Yeah, because it's one thing to have a tool, but if you can't use it because you don't understand the instruction manual, it doesn't do you any good.
So this is right out of the box, very
Yeah.
simple. Turn it on and acquires satellites. One, I think buyers are going to get to the point where they're going to demand that they work with a buyer's agent who has this because it's additional information. But two, on the agent side, where you can share this among agents. Each agent doesn't need to have their own individual device. It's not tied to their phone. The app will connect to the device and you can pass it from team member to team member. So you can buy it for a team, or you can buy one or a few for your brokerage and make it available to agents who are then going to be able to go out and provide a higher level of service to their clients.
And Ryan will attest. So he's got 2 in his office right now. They're already starting to ask, hey, can I use it? Hey, can I use it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I have one other spare and they can use that one, but they're not getting mine.
And the point is that because of the battery life and because of the way in which the device works, it's a very easy to use, and it's a very good solution for teams, as Ryan said, and offices, because there's nothing else like it on the market. You can't do this at this price with anything else on the market.
And I think it's going to become an in-demand piece of technology. If you worked with an agent I started using e-signature in 2009, and people didn't know what it was. They were unsure. They were uncomfortable using it. But now if you work with an agent in 2025 and they don't have e-signature, you're very likely moving on to somebody who can provide those services. I think this is going to be very similar.
Yeah, I hope so, because from my perspective, it makes the process much less complicated. And that's what the name of the game is. Why would you waste time on something that you don't have to? Because you can get an answer. I walk out of stores if somebody can't answer a question for me in 30 seconds.
That's because you're impatient.
I might be impatient in this day and age where information is available to you on your phone or on your watch, right? The idea that I have to wait 6 weeks for somebody to come out and drop a pin or a flag in the corner of a property, it's just crazy.
It's crazy. It's unreasonable. No seller is going to wait around for a buyer to do that. Right. So be able to take this and have a very high degree of certainty that what you're able to understand the lines and understand what you can and can't do with a property. Just can't see how it doesn't make sense for everybody to be using this. Our job is to take technology and make it useful as agents to the consumer to make the process of purchasing a home as easy as possible. We're seeing consolidation across the industry in services in order to make things even easier for the buyer. I think this is one of those game-changing technologies. And the use of an existing technology, it's not creating technology out of whole cloth. This is an existing technology and finding a way to make it affordable and rapidly usable at a very low barrier to entry and a very low level of complication. As you say, it's not complicated.
Before we sign off, I want to talk about the affordability for a minute. We got into it a little bit with John. It's just you and me right now.
Yep.
It's $500 for the device, and it's $100 a month.
Right.
If you're sharing the device in a team, let's say there's 3 of you on the team, you're talking about $33 a month, $167, and then $33 a month for 4-inch accuracy.
Yeah.
That's
a very low barrier to entry for agents if they want to try and partner up with some other agents because they don't want that extra cost. But I'll tell you what, it's made it easier for me to help clients understand this property won't work or this property will work. And it's allowed them to make more confident decisions more quickly. For me, it paid for itself within the first 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a couple of times and it's definitely led to offers.
Oh, 100%.
It's definitely led to offers. And at the same time, it's led to you not having to spend time chasing down,
for agents where we used to have to go to town hall to do everything. Yeah. And now, granted, a lot of it is the government information systems platforms that the towns or the municipalities are using. You can look the stuff up online. The one thing that hasn't changed is we can download a plot plan off the town websites and we can even print it. But what does that mean when we go in the field? It's not useful. Those plot plans printed out are not useful to ourselves or our clients when we're in the field. And this takes those same tax maps you can get from the town. They're available through the app we're utilizing on this. And now that same data has been digitized in combination with the ReFlex device. Now that information that was once not useful is now useful.
Yeah, we could do an entire podcast on the mapping app that we're using. But I will say this, that the accuracy that we've seen on it is incredible. We've been able to match it up with real world fixed locations and they're in the right spot, which tells us that everything else is in the right spot. And the ease of use with that application has also given us and your clients a certain amount of comfort in knowing that everything's going to work.
Sure. And I think another thing that John covered pretty well was the skeptic who says, why can't I just use the GPS device on my phone? What if I use the same app you guys are using, but without the ReFlex device? And the challenge is the accuracy of your GPS on your phone. We've sampled it and you saw it in one of the clips in the video. You'll see either a dot with a giant circle around it saying, we think you're in this circle somewhere. We don't know where. That is not helpful. That's fine for driving directions, not fine for looking at a property. Or we literally watch the dot just meander around the screen because your accuracy with the GPS device built into your phone is only about 5 or 6 feet. And again, fine for following the blue line to get drive where you want to go. Not so great when you're walking a property line.
Yeah, it's revolutionary. It truly is revolutionary. It's going to change the way in which people evaluate properties. There's much greater speed. One last thing, it's also going to change the way in which companies who are doing improvements to properties, how they're able to do their work. There'll be no excuses that somebody built a fence on the wrong side of a property line anymore.
Yeah.
There'll be no excuses about somebody putting a swimming pool too close to a septic system, or somebody putting a shed on their neighbor's yard or whatever. All of those things go away because of this device. And the people who are doing the installing should have one. Are they going to use it every day? No. Are they going to use it several times a week? Probably. And that alone makes it worth having. It's the same thing with the real estate agents. You're going to use it every day? No. You're going to use it every time you take somebody out to show? I don't know. My bet is more than 50% of the time.
Yeah. For me, I just, like I said, I turned mine on when I was heading out with clients and it was ready to go. And if they were curious about the property and we wanted to understand a little bit better, we actually I'd just go to my car and grab it. It was already on. It was already locked. I'd bring up the app and away we would go.
Yeah. It's absolutely great technology.
Yeah.
Everybody, that was an exciting episode.
Ken has an odd,
I'm exhausted.
definition of exciting. We were talking about technology, so that always exhausts you.
I mean, coming after mortgages, this was a really exciting episode.
Yeah, see, they didn't get to take part in the barbecue discussion we had before we started recording.
See,
you were much more into that.
I would like to point out that Ryan threw cold water on our barbecue discussion.
I was ready to go. I got things to do.
Whether you have things to do or not, there's never enough good barbecue talk. We'll have to do an entire episode on the perfect post-sale, post-move-in barbecue.
Sure.
I have very strong ideas as to what should be included in that and who should be invited to that party.
Until then,
we're the Real Estate Navigation Team. And this was the Real Estate It's Not That Complicated podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
We'll see you next time.